Hi friends, it's Brittany at Ink and Papyrus and welcome back to my channel. I recently ordered a few things which in turn has replenished my brown paper packaging stash. This stuff seems to come in everything, which is great because this stuff is phenomenal for so many projects. And today we are turning this boring brown packaging, which I know you guys have laying around at home, into some beautiful collage masterboard with a specific emphasis on fall themes. Look at all of these masterboard ideas. We're going to be using leaves, we're going to be doing stamping, stenciling, using gesso, a variety of techniques to distress the packaging, and you are going to love the way this looks. You are going to want to use these to make journal covers, tucks, pockets, specimen cards, frame your photos, write on the back of them. These are so versatile, and this is the great start to so many projects. At first glance, this packaging may seem a little bit boring, but think of it as a gorgeous neutral base to build upon. Today, we're going to be using it to create some fall/harvest earthy masterboard. I like to think of masterboard as a collage of something that works perfect as either the base or the final product for so many things. So let's get to it and pretty these puppies up. First, start by sectioning your brown packaging into manageable pieces. Consider what you want to do with it when determining what size to use. Obviously, if your goal is just to make a ton of masterboard to use as the base layer of a project, feel free to keep these as big as you would like. You can almost like roll it up like you would a snippet roll. Obviously, if you are doing intricate projects and you want to use this for a cover, maybe start a little bit smaller. Journaling cards, kind of same thing, etc., etc. Regardless of what I choose to do with the masterboards, ultimately, I like to start by distressing them some. Now, for a more distressed look, consider crinkling the paper. I love this look for covers. I think the crinkled paper seems to soak up ink even better. Just consider that things may not lay as flat when you do this. What I like to do is just come through with some coffee spray, some gesso, start flicking stuff around, get into those creases and dab those ink pads. The crinkled look does look amazing and it really does soak up those inks better. Here I'm just using some Tim Holtz Distress Oxide Spray. The pigments go a long way. You don't have to use those. For a cheaper alternative, take a look at some of the food colorings. Those work really well. Various pigments you can get for maybe a little bit cheaper. Those look amazing as well. And ultimately, one of my favorite ways to distress this is just by taking some instant coffee, dissolving it in water. I actually end up running out of coffee along the way, and I will show you, I will go into my kitchen and show you how I mix this up. For a distressed look, I don't think you can beat it. The other thing I really enjoyed distressing these papers with were the gelato, the Faber-Castell gelatos. These are the metallic set. They have a variety of different themes and color palettes, but these are fabulous. I think they look so good on the brown. You'll see in the video there's some even the strong pigments like the Tim Holtz Distress Oxide sprays. Some of them got lost in the brown, and I guess I was kind of surprised by that. The one thing that seemed to look amazing on the brown paper, regardless of what shade I was using, were the Faber-Castell gelatos. They're very water reactive, and so when you spray them with a little bit of water or dab them with a paintbrush, they spread so nice. You can keep them as is, just like a crayon, and leave some brown poking through, or you can go over them with water, smush them around, and really get a nice even layer on the brown. I can't tell you how thrilled I was with how they came out, and I'm so glad because I kind of forgot they were laying around in my drawer. I haven't used them in a while, and this was the perfect project. The other thing you'll see me use a lot of in this video, aside from the gesso, is some gold gilding wax. I have it sitting next to me. I want to be able to tell you the brand. It's Vintage Gold Art Alchemy metallic wax. Also, it takes a little bit of time to dry, but it goes so nicely on the brown. It doesn't get lost in the brown packaging. It stands out really nicely. So what you'll see me do here is just make some marks with the gesso. I do like to leave some brown poking out. Typically, I will go over parts of the brown packaging with the gesso because I think, first of all, the white and the brown contrast is stunning. I love the way it gives that nice weathered look, but I also, depending on the type of ink and the color of ink you're using, stamps, stenciling, things like that show up so much better. If you're not sure what to do in terms of distressing your papers, just start making marks. I think that is the key to giving yourself a great base to start working with. Just start mark making. I love doing that with the gelatos. Here I'm making a bunch of circles. I'm going around the circles with the white to kind of give it some highlights, spraying inside the circles, trying some different techniques inside each of the circles, almost like a grid journaling pattern, which we actually will officially do a little bit later in this video. But just start making marks on the paper and you'll build from there. And I think it makes starting a lot less intimidating. So here you'll see me using a ton of different techniques. I am getting in there with some gesso. I'm rubbing the ink pads in the creases and the wrinkles to really emphasize that weathered look. You'll notice that several times I take up additional pieces of the packaging and go over the areas I've sprayed the Distress Oxide. Guys, this pigment goes really far. I am able to mop the ink up with several sides. I don't like wasting ink, and I don't like it to sit there and pool either, because otherwise the next time that page is getting moved, it's going to trickle down and stain my floor. So get your packaging and just rub it on in there, soak up that remaining ink, flip it over, and you've already started to distress a new piece of paper. That's what I do with the wet gesso as well, though obviously you don't want to leave it laying there on top of each other or else they are going to get stuck together. I really like it when there are several different patterns of ink spray. So that could include a fast spritz with your ink bottle. That could be a slow kind of pressing down on the nozzle to create a larger like pool, like larger droplets. I also like turning the paper upside down, which you'll see me do in a second. That really allows the ink to kind of drip down the page. If there isn't enough ink to replicate that effect, just go ahead and spray the ink, the wet ink, with some water. I do that with the coffee as well, and it'll give you that nice runny kind of pattern that I love so much. So there are several different ways to create splotching. At least to me, I think the more diverse patterns of splotches you have, the more interesting the piece is. Now, in terms of distressing the paper, you can go way farther than I have. There are so many other things you can do to add layers. Some of them I didn't want to busy up too much because I know that some of them I will be stamping on, some of them I'm going to be stenciling on. I'm going to be doing a few other things to these, so I really just wanted to get a good base going. If you just want an abstract amalgamation of weathering and inks and distress, by all means, just keep going until you're happy with it. This piece I'm working on now ended up being one of my absolute favorites. The crinkles, the greens, the gold, it works so well together. I end up doing some stenciling on this piece, and I end up emphasizing some of the stenciling with some purple gelatos, and it is a beauty. I have no doubt I'm going to be using this to make a journal cover. The stencil I used had some French verbiage. You'll see what I mean when we get further into this, but this ended up being one of my absolute favorite pieces. Okay, so in a second, you're going to see me walk off camera, and I'm sorry, you're going to get the back of my head. I am taking my empty instant coffee water bottle. We are taking a trip to my kitchen and we are going to make some of that beautiful, deep, rich coffee dye. And if you are into a less strong dye, you could always make tea dye, though I don't know how this would show up on the brown paper, probably not well. And you would probably have to soak several tea bags in a small amount of water to create a really concentrated form to be visible, though I'm sure you could do it. You could do the same with beets. So you know what? Okay. In the future, coming up, we just need to work on making our own dyes. I'm sure many of you guys know how to do this at home, but you don't have to buy the fancy, expensive distress oxide sprays, is my point, though they are lovely to have. And it is nice to have the full variety of colors. So let me just start off by saying the way I'm going to show you is probably the incorrect way. You shouldn't be lazy and scoop the instant coffee out with the actual sprayer nozzle, because this is a great way to get the nozzle completely clogged up. That being said, this is like a heavy duty, I don't want to say industrial, but it's like a heavy duty spray bottle. It's from some kind of conditioner I had at one point. It's not one of those cheap little plastic bottles you get in a pack of 30. So the spray bottle has been through it all. So I've done this a million times with this. It doesn't get clogged ever. It's amazing. If you're using one of the little nozzle things that's like super temperamental, don't scoop out the coffee grounds with it, please. It's the best way to get it clogged up, and you're going to be cursing my name. So once you have a nice heaping scoop of coffee grounds, make sure they're instant coffee in your bottle. Fill it almost all the way with water and go ahead, either put the lid back on, or actually you're probably better off just covering the top of the bottle with your thumb and giving it a really, really, really good shake until you think that the grounds should be dissolved. Finally, we are going to add some rubbing alcohol into the bottle. This keeps the coffee or tea or whatever you're making from growing mold. You do not want fuzzies in your instant coffee dye bottle. Okay, guys, I'm very, very excited about this next part in the process. So what you decide to do ultimately with this part is dependent on what you plan to use these for. You'll see me stencil a bird and make a really nice focal point out of one of these because I think I want to use that bird to make a cover. I end up doing it up. If you want to leave these as background papers, you may do a little bit of stenciling, but you're probably not going to have a single focal point necessarily, or maybe you'll have, if you want to use this as snippet rolls, for example, maybe you'll create a pattern so that you have a multitude of focal points. It's all in what you want to use these for. In keeping with the fall/Halloween forest theme, I grabbed this tree/woods stencil, and this is a stencil I use all the time. These are the kinds of stencils you can use even if you only want to create background paper, because you don't really have to see the stencil in its entirety to really get the feel of the tree, if that makes sense. And you don't even really have to know that it's a tree at all to really appreciate the nice pattern that this leaves. So even if you end up stenciling and only using a small piece of that paper, you still get the effect. I hope that makes sense. You'll notice that I do struggle a little bit trying to transfer the image of this stencil onto the paper, and I think that's because it's really crinkled. Just consider that when you decide how much you want to distress these papers and whether you want to crinkle it or not. You'll see that I have a paddle brush here. Sometimes when I'm using my stencils, I put the ink on a dauber and then stencil. I don't think there's any way this would work. The only saving grace here was that I had a nice big paddle brush. I absolutely love the background this created. It creates a whole lot of interest, dimension. I'm really, really happy with how this came out. Feel free to keep going if you are trying to get a layered effect, but in general, I think I'm going to be really happy with this as I think I'll probably use this as a collage paper. Maybe I'll use it to make some journaling cards. A technique that I use often with stencils is laying the stencil down on paper and spraying it with distress oxide. I have to tell you that on the brown, I don't think it showed up very well, but also I did not get a very good print. I think it's because there was room in between the paper and the stencil since I crinkled the paper. So I ended up not really liking this a whole lot. I ended up going back over the stencil with some gesso, and this is what I mean by layering, especially if you're not happy with how things turned out. And again, I was a little bit disappointed because the gesso is thin. And you've probably seen me do this in previous videos, I have gone over stencils with modeling paste, which is thicker. It gives a nice raised look, and it gives a really, really, really nice clean stenciled image because it's much thicker. I would recommend, I don't end up doing any stencils with modeling paste in this video, but I think that is a huge win. If you're using white modeling paste, it looks amazing. It gives amazing contrast up against the brown paper. So I end up getting really frustrated. I couldn't find my modeling paste. I know it's in a drawer somewhere. So I end up just going over this music stencil with the gold gilding wax and love the way that turns out. And then I go over the stencil around the stencil with some white gesso to really frame the music and hopefully make the image pop. Oh wait, I forgot. I didn't go over the music with gold gilding wax. I think I did that later. This time I went over it with some gesso. Disappointing results. The music is a very detailed stencil, and you didn't get that detail with the gesso because it's too loose, it's too runny. You could definitely get some good results if you were working with a larger, less intricate stencil like that tree I was using earlier. For an intricate stencil like this, I would recommend either going over the stencil with ink or again using some modeling paste. And there you see the bird I have stenciled. I end up doing a lot more with this print, and it's gorgeous. So stay tuned. We're not done with it yet. So I ended up taking one of my bright blue gelatos and just making some marks all along the outside of the bird. And I'm sorry my big head is in the way, but I also end up taking a bottle of liquid pearls and adding a dot of the pearl paint on each one of its feathers, on its wing, on the tail, on its head, and I love how this looks. As I'm sure you saw, the gelatos react amazingly with water. You can either put water on a paintbrush and spread the gelato out. You can spray the paper directly. You can just put some water on your finger and spread it around. It all works. These are so easy to work with. So next you'll see me doing some stamping. I am working on a collage paper, or at least that's what I intend it to be. I don't want a singular focal point. I want designs all over the paper so that I can rip it, tear it away, use it in different projects, and love the way it looks. Okay, so you'll see I struggle a little bit here with the stamping. I thought I would get cute and put some gesso on the stamp because the white does look amazing up against the brown. But no, it was a no-go. It was a huge mess. The gesso just sat in the stamp, and it was a mess to clean. And the print that I did get on the paper looked like mush. Would not recommend. The actual cleanup process, though, I just gave up and I tipped the stamp upside down and started spraying. It made some really, really cool white marks on the brown paper. So I guess that was the upside of all of this. It's one of those things, guys, like if you don't ever try, you'll never know. And some of our favorite techniques and some of our favorite projects probably end up being that way by some accident. So, don't be afraid to try. It's just brown packaging paper. Like, was there ever a better medium to try something silly and messy and stupid? No, probably not. And I have to tell you, literally everything I've gotten recently has come in this brown packaging paper, and I've started to stack it up in my closet, and I have gone through probably half of it with this project, and I could not be more excited to use it and use these in my journals. So some of the stamps came out really, really good. In general, I would recommend probably stamping with black ink. Off camera, I believe I did some other stamping with some lighter color ink. It didn't turn out great. I totally hate cleaning my stamps, so a lot of times I'll spray them with water and then continue along to try and stamp with them, and it creates a little bit more of a blurry image. In general, I don't mind that, so that's what you'll see me doing here. Okay, so next I go back to these feathers that I did not like how the print came out. It was very runny because I used the thin gesso like I was talking about earlier. If you don't like something, keep going and fix it and work on it till you do. So I came in with my charcoal pencil. I tried to go around, outline the feathers further, give them a little bit of the inside the inside part of the feather and the base, the quill, maybe, is that what you call it? Anyways, and then I go around with one of the water paintbrushes I have to kind of let the charcoal bleed a little bit, give it a little bit more character. And let's just say I definitely like them a lot more now than when I did when it was just the gesso itself. So guys, this is the crinkled paper I was talking to you about that I absolutely love. I don't know what it is. It's the color scheme. It's the browns with the coffee splatters, with the green in the crinkles, with a little bit of orange in there, and the gold gilding wax over top, and some black stenciling the rose. Oh, I adore this. Oh, I absolutely adore. I am definitely going to make a journal cover out of this. I may do a little bit more to it, probably not a whole lot, and I am definitely going to sew it on some light chipboard. Maybe we'll work on that in a future video. But guys, this right here is what I was going for. So sorry about my head being in the way and the Masterboard being a little out of focus here, guys. I screwed up the shot. Anyways, I know it's kind of annoying. I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. So if you'll see in a minute, this is one of my favorite Masterboards. The stamping was, again, on point. I do a bunch of kind of emphasizing the stamps with gesso. This ends up being sort of a morbid curiosity / skeleton Masterboard. There's a whole lot of flicks of ink and gesso and such, but I think going around with the actual stamps with the gelatos really kind of brings the stamp out, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. I think you'll really like this too. Okay, this next one I'm really excited about because think of this concept like grid journaling. We are creating grids with the black stamp as I have here and outlining them with some gelatos. And we are creating the base to do some leaf printing. I did a recent video on this. If you would like to see that, I will put that above and in the description box below. So I start by coating the leaves in gesso. You want to figure out which side of the leaf has more detail, the most veins, things like that. Which side will lay more flat, etc., etc. Once you've picked the best side, go ahead and coat the leaf with some gesso. Be very, very light. If you have a lot of gesso on the leaf, you're going to miss a lot of details. I would say put less gesso than you think that you'll need. Okay, then you're going to press the leaf onto the box or wherever you are printing the leaf. Be very diligent about pressing down really, really hard on it and go over it several times. This will add detail to your print. Previously, I have actually used a brayer to really get that leaf, transfer that leaf print, and that has also worked really well. After I print in each of the boxes, I actually end up going around the gelato with some gold gilding wax. I love this stuff, and I think the green and the gold and the white on the brown just look magical. And guys, this goes for anything, not just leaves. Print on, you could even do bottle caps. Like anything that you can print looks amazing. If you're using white gesso and you're doing it on this brown paper, I promise you it's going to look great. Okay guys, so speaking of leaves, I thought, what if we do a leaf collage on this brown packaging paper? How cool would that be? And so you could obviously leave the leaves as is. I decided that I really, really liked the way they looked when they had some white gesso on them. This can be a little tricky. You want them to be fresh. You don't want them to crack and break when you manipulate them. So I end up just coating the leaves with some white gesso, and once I'm done with that, I will work on adhering them to the brown packaging paper. So you can't tell because I sped this video up, but oh my gosh, it took so long to get all of these leaves gessoed. Maybe I should have just laid the brown paper out like it is and then just splattered some gesso on top of them to save some time. I don't know. You do whatever you want to do, but this was like an arduous process. Okay, so some of these leaves were really tricky to stick down. Make sure you are gessoing and gluing down the flattest side of the leaf. Here I use this Aleene's white tacky glue. Silicone glue will work well. After I apply the glue, I hold it down for a few seconds. I do put some extra glue on the stem as well, and then you'll see me put either a bottle of Mod Podge or gesso on it, something to kind of adhere it flat to the paper. At the end of this project, I did end up laying the brown paper with the leaves out, putting some brown paper on top of it, and putting some heavy objects down. I do decide eventually to sew this, and I end up doing it off camera. I decided I wanted to use this as actually the cover of a book because it ended up looking so cool. So I just ended up sewing it, but obviously you would still have had to glue it down. After I really get some glue on the leaves and at least get them partially down, once that dries, I lift up the edges of the leaves a little bit and get my portable hot glue gun out and end up putting some hot glue on the leaf and tacking it down further that way. If you're not going to sew the leaves, I would suggest you do the same, especially with the stems that seem to come up no matter how much white glue I put on them. After the leaves were glued down, I put gold gilding wax over top of some of them, and I am telling you, between the green and the white gesso and the gold, these looked absolutely magical. And finally, in order to really seal everything down and protect the leaves, I go over them with Mod Podge. Please don't judge my technique here. It was more of a pour. It was difficult to coat all of the leaves. Some of them were still sticking up a little bit, which is ultimately why I decided to go ahead and sew this down when this was all said and done. And I think just the look of the sewing will be gorgeous, especially for a journal cover. So you can look forward to that. Once the leaves were all coated with Mod Podge, I did have to go back over some of them with the gold gilding wax. I don't think I waited nearly long enough for all of them to dry, and so I kind of smudged some of the gilding wax around and it kind of lost its luster. So I just went back in and put some extra gold down, and I really, really, really am loving the way that this looks. So I'm really excited about this next technique. This is grid journaling. I did do a video on this. If you are unfamiliar, I will link that above and in the description box. But essentially, we are just creating some haphazard grids. We are doing some collage inside. First, I start by taking a charcoal pencil and going over it with some water to let it bleed a little bit. I just really like the way this looks. So grid journaling here isn't really any different than it would be on any other paper. We're just doing it on a brown packaging medium, which I think, especially with all the weathered looking inks and everything, makes this, it just gives it a really cool backdrop. So just like grid journaling anywhere else, you can have the same sort of general theme, or you can do a completely different layout in each grid and all on the same page. It all works. You don't even have to use the same medium. You could paint in a grid and collage in the other. Here I am choosing to do a little bit of scribbling, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I have this embossed steampunk paper that I think looks good with the Halloween kind of grunge theme that I have going here. So I start just by taking some of those embossed steampunk pieces and punching them out, cutting them out, and adding a couple to each grid. I'm really going for the mixed media look, so I decide to do some stenciling with some ink, and I want to kind of make the grids a little bit different but have some uniformity to them. So first I pull out my nice harvest paper pack and realize there's nothing in here for me that I want to use. I end up actually collaging with some of that glitter orange ribbon. I think that adds a really nice touch. And I decide that my little steampunk punch outs are a little too boring, so after I glue them down, I go over them with some gold gilding wax. Yes, I am obsessed with this stuff. Luckily, I have several tubes stocked away in my drawer. I think I just got them either on Amazon or Michaels, but they just look so good on everything. You could gild a turd with this stuff and it would look great, guys. I'm telling you. I'm just having so much fun with this. I love grid journaling. There's something so not intimidating about it because, well, if you screw up in one grid, you have 15 others, and they don't have to be perfect. Like, especially when, I don't know, you start off with some scribbles and some loose squares that are totally off kilter. It just invites you to be creative and just, heck, go for it. And just play outside the lines, which I really love. So guys, we're almost to the end of the video, but I wanted to show you a couple more examples of pretty collage patterns you can create on this brown packaging. And speaking of grid journaling, oftentimes I love just mark making, maybe with patterns. I've, instead of creating in the grids itself, actually creating patterns around prints that I've already made, such as the stencils that I have done with these leaves. I end up going around them with gelatos, and I think it looks brilliant up against the gesso. The stamps, the black stamps, and the gelatos really pop against the white. Again, for effect, I have left, brown, some of that brown alone. Like, let it come through, let it breathe a little bit. But this is another great pattern paper that works perfect in collage. There's no discrete focal point. It's full of repeating patterns and things that will look great no matter where you rip the page. So let's take a look at all of the packaging that we distressed and decorated today. So guys, first, I love doing tutorials like this because we are using literal trash and transforming it into something gorgeous. We're using the bland, kind of neutral look of the paper to our advantage, and we are using different mediums, different colors that create such a stark contrast with the brown that honestly, this is one of the most beautiful things that I think it's so easy to make. And I love doing tutorials with you guys that I know you have all the supplies you need at home. You don't have to go out and buy anything. To me, I think those are the best tutorials. These are the best projects, and they spark the most creativity. Be sure to look for an upcoming video where we take this packaging and turn them into fantastic projects. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did and you found value in this, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you the next time.